Hey, good evening on your side. I know you're on GMT time, so I want to thank you, Philip, for taking the time out to hang out with us.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's lovely joining you. It's a very sweltering uh, afternoon in London. Extremely hot, which is very uncharacteristic of London.
You guys are suffering through what we get to go through each and every summer over here. This is
Yeah,
this is the life. This is the life over here. But yeah, I can imagine that with all that usual dreary London weather, that having these hot summers, and I think we were talking about the fact that those homes out there are not necessarily built with central AC and all that, and so
hmm
those old style homes. So you're really having to bear it and grin, huh?
absolutely.
All right. Well, you know what? It is always a pleasure speaking to you. And again, like I said, I want to thank you for taking the time and just in continuing our conversations, which we have. I know we have many conversations sometimes, and I
hmm
think this one was interesting to me because of this
Right.
COVID climate and many men are home with their wives and their children in in a very uncharacteristic kind of scenario, right?
hmm
And I finding it interesting that some of the reading I was doing was talking about the contributions that men make to the household, and the fact that a lot of men, the expectation is that if you are going to be part of helping to raise children and fathering, then you have to be a surrogate mother as opposed to bringing your unique male talents, right, to the table. And then the question came is that what does that even look like? What does that even look like? What is fathering? What does fathering look like? You know what I mean? So let's start there.
mm mm mm. Yeah, well, fathering. Well, I guess for me, where it starts is before I became a father. So I can talk from my own personal experience in terms of seeing how fatherhood was modeled to me by my father. And it's a really interesting point because it's almost like a completely different world when I think about it. And I think this is where we find ourselves as men. We're juxtaposed into these two different worlds where we're just literally in limbo. We're really trying to figure who we are because we've seen on one side we've seen our parents or our, in my case, say my father model what fatherhood is,
Mhm.
but that was for his time. So when I think of my dad, I think of somebody who would come home from work. He's worked hard. He'll come home and he would have his special chair that nobody else was allowed to sit in, and he would sit in it, and he'd read a newspaper. He would his food would be served to him. So one of us kids would bring his food on a tray and have a glass of water and a napkin, and he would sit there and he would eat his meal. He'd be watching the news, and when he's finished, he would simply put the tray down, and yeah, and one of us would pick it up and take it to the kitchen. You know, in those days there was no remote control, so we were the remote control for. So from his seat of power, you know,
Right,
he would say, turn on the TV, put on the news, this and that and so forth, and we were the remote. You know,
right, right.
so that's what I saw. I never saw my dad in the kitchen. Never saw him, you know, cook or even turn on the kettle for a cup of tea or anything of
For
that
tea,
sort.
right,
Yeah,
right, right, right.
but that was what worked for them, right? It worked perfectly. If my dad was to go into the kitchen, my mom would quickly get in there and say, "No, no, 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 no! What are you doing here?
Right.
This is wrong. This is my territory. You go and sit down. and so forth. And dad will do all the handiwork that needed to be done, around the house, repairs and anything of that sort. He'll be in the garden. He'll do his gardening and pruning his roses and stuff like that. That's what he would do.
Clear separation, basically, like
Yeah, he would,
yeah.
he would mow the lawn. He would do all that stuff. Any painting that needed to be done in the house, that was taken care of.
Mhm.
Now, even though mom was working, so they were both working. I mean, there were times, obviously, when we were younger when mom wasn't working, but, there was long periods of time when she was working. And
Right.
when they were both working, those roles were still very distinct,
Mm.
right?
And I think let me catch you here, because like I said, you said your mother was working, and for
Yeah,
those of us that actually know your mother, we know that she did, she had a pretty powerful job and did a lot of stuff and was very successful. So if you're still saying that, even given all that, there was still this separation of roles, right?
yeah. The roles were very, very distinct, very, 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 very set, and there was no crossover.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
So what's that unreality look like now? I mean, because because
So
that
yeah,
sounds like a pipe dream, right? Because,
well,
and you said it, you said that that's what it was before, right?
yeah,
And that's what it before, and I think that many of us who come from a separate culture, or cultures that are um, cultures that have maintained a certain amount of that balance can identify, right? But what does that look like now for a person like you who was raised? I didn't have that, and I think we've spoken about this. Like, I wasn't
yeah,
raised with parent, of mother and father in the home necessarily for a significant period of my life.
yeah.
So, in listening to you say that, how does that flip? If that's your model of what the role of father looked like, what's that awakening? How does that rude awakening happen for you in terms of the fact, because we know that's not what it looks like now. That's not
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, you see, I knew from the get-go that I wasn't married to somebody from the same culture as I was, and so therefore I couldn't have the same expectations. And I didn't really want to have those same expectations anyway, because I'm always been somebody that's happy to to wash the dishes. To In fact, what's really interesting is that we were taught as kids, all of us, male, female, to to cook,
Mm,
clean, wash the dishes, everything. In fact, we all had our turns where we had to wash the dishes, and stuff like that. So that was not strange to me, right? But what I do know is that I didn't have those same expectations for getting married, because I knew it was a different time, a different era, and so forth. However, right, it's interesting that when I got married,
mm,
and I don't even think it was conscious at all. But my wife would tell you that for some reason, before we got married, I was cooking for her. I was, inviting her over for a meal, and I'd cook up a storm and so forth.
mm-hmm.
And the first few years of marriage, I would cook and do stuff like that. And then eventually, slowly, but unconsciously, she would say that suddenly I just seemed to just, not cook that often.
Yeah, yeah.
and and
I've been
suddenly,
there, done that.
yeah, and suddenly, I come home and I'm seated down, with my feet up, watching, the news and stuff like
Yep.
that. So, that just shows that even though in your mind you might have, oh, I'm gonna be, the perfect husband. I'm gonna be, washing dishes, changing diapers. I'm gonna be,
Right.
cooking and stuff like that. What you see modeled to you as a young child growing up
Mm.
literally has a huge impact, and it's there in your subconscious, and yeah, it'll come out
It'll come
sooner
out
or
sooner or
later.
later. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that is actually such a poignant point, because in talking about what we've been speaking about then when you have no models, right? What
Mhm.
happens to people who have no models, or people that have models and those models are not good models, right? What
Mhm.
does that look like? Because you're saying that your reset, or your place of, this is the base place where I'm going to fall back on, was to what you saw modeled, which is, I'm coming into here and I'm sitting, and I kind of, I had a stepfather at a certain point, and looking at the model, like I shared with you, of coming in from work, put the briefcase down, grab some food, go out, come back later on in the evening, after going to the club, come back, the club meaning like the flying club or whatever, the
Yeah.
sports clubs that they used to have, where they'd talk, do man talk, and then come back home. That was the model. So it wasn't weird for me, to to expect that, hey, you're married now, and it's like, I can go out and I can come back, and I expect to find my food in the oven.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I expect to find hot food in the oven. Or I always tell this story. It was funny because I was hanging out. We're back in Zambia, and I was hanging out with a buddy of mine that I grew up with, and he was married with kids, and we had been out. And this was actually in '94, just before the wedding. We had been out
Okay.
doing a whole bunch of stuff, hanging out, and then it was time to go home, and it was some ridiculous hour, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And
Right.
it was like, oh, drop me off. It's time to drop me off at home and drop off our buddy, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no, 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 let's go by the house. And I was like, let's go by the house, dude. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. No, 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 let's go. We gotta eat before we go. You guys, I think you guys go. I said, we gotta eat before you take it. He says, yeah, I'll go to eat before you take it. So we go over to the house, and
Mhm.
you know what? His wife came out, cooked. We were eating at like 4:30 in the morning, but literally
Wow.
cooked the full meat. And I it was so unrealistic, for me with the Western mind. It
Yeah.
was so unbelievable. But I think there's an element of that cultural thing that still sticks there, which thinks that that's okay. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
like that's normal, and I think that's where we have this challenge, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Having that cultural background, because another thing that I wanted to talk to you about is that, yes, as we morph into this Western civilization version of manhood, for people who have this cultural background, whether it doesn't matter, color doesn't matter. It's just, there are many people who come from cultures which have these very strong roles, right?
Yeah.
And you, yeah, and you try to evolve. But what I'm learning is that men get these mixed messages, which is they that we our wives or our partners want us to be involved, uh, but they treat us like we'll be an inadequate mother, right? I want you to be involved, but you're going to be an inadequate mother. And then we are invited into the birthing process, right? But
Yeah.
not nurturing process. And for I think for people of certain cultures, that's a brand new thing, being invited into the birthing process. Because
Yes.
growing
Yes.
up, it was taboo for us to
Absolutely.
even talk about that. Couldn't even go near a maternity
Mhm.
ward, right? And here we are, we come across the oceans, and all of a sudden, yeah, as for you, you've got a fantastic story about one of those. So,
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. How can
so
I?
what's your
Yeah.
thought about that? About this need and question for men to get engaged and involved in fathering, yet it's always this comparison, you know,
Mm, mm,
that you're not
mm.
doing it like your wife, or you're not doing it like a woman, or you're not, you know what I'm saying? So, what's your thought on that?
Yes. There's there's definitely. It's funny that I think there's definitely something that happens. Again, I think this might be unconscious as well to a woman when she's in a home. All right. So let's say you get married and she's you've both invested in buying a new home and you both move in together as married couples for the first time. You find immediately the woman begins to just, tell you, this goes here, that goes here, you know. In fact, the whole house is her jurisdiction. She owns it. I think the only place maybe the man might own was like maybe, his music system, where where his music goes and stuff like that, where his laptop or where his game room, if he's got, if he's into games and so forth, all of that stuff. But the rest, the glasses go here, the pots and pans go here, this and that. And again, who made, who says that they should go there? Why is she the one making those decisions? But It's almost like it's unconscious, but it's like, no, this is how I want the way things to go.
Right.
And I think that is the same thing that applies to, when it comes to, to how, bringing up kids as well, where you find that, there's certain things that a woman expects, the man to do. So, if it's holding the baby, you should hold him like this, this is the way to hold him, hold her and so forth. Changing the diapers is like, let me show you how to do it.
Let me show you how to do it. Specific instructions, right?
Yeah. So slowly, it's almost like it's not just the child who's being brought up, but it's the husband as well.
Yes.
Yes. So that's an interesting, that dynamics there.
I think and I think you make a very good point, because part of
sorry, let me just jump in there actually.
Okay.
I was talking to some guys just not too long ago, and it was just very interesting just hearing the experiences of marriage. And one of the guys says, you know what? When I go to the toilet, when I go to the loo, when I come out, my wife says, "Have you washed your hands?" and we were like, "What?" She says that. She says, yeah, all the time. Did you wash your hands? And normally that's something that you'd say to to a child. Did you wash your hands?
Right.
So that was an interesting observation.
It's almost as if and feel free to the ladies who are watching this. It's kind of interesting that you say that. Feel free, ladies who are watching, feel free to chime in. You can post a comment. We will, if you got a question, feel free to go into the comments and ask a question. But I agree with you. I think that there is an element of that mothering that continues, and there's all this conversation about gender equality, there's all this conversation about equity, and and it's a larger conversation. But I think what is interesting to me is that, given the epidemic of fatherlessness, right, to a certain extent, especially in America, there's this epidemic of fatherlessness, which has statistical data to support it.
Yeah.
The question then becomes, really, is it just about having a father in the house, or is it about, like I said at the beginning, having a father who's engaged, and how are they engaged? So once we get to that place, which is where we are, we then move to this next thing: is if a father's engagement is being dictated to by, like how I try to, I may give an example. I'm trying to do something with my kid, and maybe I'm explaining it in a way that makes sense to me, which is, you could say, a male way of doing things or a father way of doing things. And my wife happens to be coming along, and she hears it, and she decides, that's not the way I'm teaching the child, right? That's not the way that I am tutoring the child. And she comes along while I'm right there talking to the kid and goes, no, you do it like this and like this and like this and like this, right? You're caught in that place of saying, okay, so the input that I have is always has to be weighed against, the woman of the house. And so my query really now is like, how do men, get to plug into their homes where the culture accepts their fears, their anger, their sadness, because it's almost like, as if, like you said, regardless of how far ahead we've gone, there are still these specific roles that women innately hold to. There's some which come directly because of the fact that they're the only ones who can bear a child, right? They're the ones who physiologically have that, and all these other connections that they have. But there's also a role that a father has. And so how is that role evolving, and what is the expectation in this new world order? Because it's not just go out there and it used to be go out there, make the money to buy the house, you know what I'm saying, to feed the kids, to make sure the school fees are paid and blah, blah, blah. And you're
Yeah.
done.
Well,
Right?
I really do think that these are the discussions that need to be had. These are the conversations that are needed, because there's a lot of assumptions. People are getting into relationships assuming that that we're all on the same page,
Mm.
And unfortunately, in many cases, we're not singing from the same hymn sheet, and we've got very different views. Some people, for example, are coming from families where there's been no father.
Right.
And so all they've seen is the mother being father and mother. And so there are certain attitudes that may seep into relationships, into marriages, where, a man is not looked upon very favorably because the wife's experience of her father has been of somebody who was never there. He was absent. And so, men become, they're seen as unreliable. And that, if you want anything done, you have to do it yourself, because a man, if you wait for a man, it will never get done, or he'll always disappoint you.
Right.
So there's that aspect as well. So, these conversations are extremely important because, as I said, we are shaped by our backgrounds, our both cultural backgrounds, as well as, how we are brought up in our individual families. So that's really important, to have those discussions, because I think that on both sides there is some confusion as to what is a man's role. Because if both husband and wife are working, both are bringing in equal amounts of money. If the wife wants anything done in the house, she can just pick up the phone and call a painter or a decorator or whether a builder, come and do the stuff. Then what's the man's role? Is it to take the trash out of the every Wednesday? For us it's on a Wednesday. Take the bins out. Is that all he's good for? Is that his role? Is it to check that the doors are locked at night? Is it his role to get up at night if there's a sound,
Right.
a bump in the night downstairs or whatever, So, what is he good for? What's his role apart from sire, your children,
So what you're saying, and I love what you're saying, because I think it leads to this question that there's confusion.
Yeah.
We're getting to a place of confusion. I think for people like me, who, again, like I say, significant part of my upbringing was raised by a single mother. And not necessarily having father figures in my life who were speaking into my life, right? Speaking the language of this is what you got to do, and you kind of start to figure it out yourself. You may go through bad patches where kind of the people that you were aiming for and you were looking at as being your heroes, a little bit, they're not necessarily the people you should be looking at. And so you start to deliberately, when you get an awakening, look for role models that you think, okay, these are the people that I'm trying to be like. There is an advantage in that you kind of start to reconstruct who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You start to build a kind of like a new legacy. I think it's harder for somebody who has had a certain presence in their life, right? It's like they've had the presence in their life, and that presence is a strong, very visible presence, but
Yeah.
not been the sort of person who has given them the information that they want or that they need to build up to. So I think that you're right in terms of talking about confusion. The second part that I want to kind of segue into is We're talking about married people, but there are many people out here many men who have children and not necessarily with the mother of their kids, right? And they're not necessarily with, in relationship. How do you navigate that? Because the presence of a father, clearly, like I said, statistics show 43% of fathers who do not see their role as something that's important to their personal identity. 54% of the fathers in the US say that parenting isn't enjoyable all of the time. Imagine that. Um, you know, only 5%, yet only 5% of households in the United States say that the ideal situation is to have the mother work and the father stay at home and take care of the kids. So society definitely doesn't see fathers as caretakers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
as part of that conversation is like, what are the things that a man who does not have a relationship need to bring into developing a fathering relationship with his child, right? Because you're not in the house. You're not
Yeah,
in the house. You're
yeah,
not present. You're not even in this COVID environment. It's like, you have children and you still have to play a role. How do you plug into that?
yeah. So I mean, I think it is extremely important that even if there's a breakdown in the relationship, even if the parents are not together, even if they don't get on, it's really important for the sake of the children that both parties have an input, a positive influence on the children. And again, that is extremely important for the kids to know that even though mom and dad are not together, that they still feel loved and they still feel that they are important to both of them. And so I think it's very important for those for that for those types of conversations to take place and to come to an agreement, because there's nothing worse, and I've seen it so many times where you have either the father talking ill of the mother in front of the children or the child, and vice versa, the mother doing the same thing, and it just doesn't bode well with that child. It really completely disrupts that child's whole worldview of men and of women and of relationships, and it has got such far-reaching consequences. So I think that's very important. But I think for single men, it's really important that they show up in the lives of their children, because for a male child, for example, I think it's really important that a child knows that his biggest cheerleader is his father, because the father is like, that's your superhero. That's the person, whether you like it or not, that you aspire to, you look up to, and you're expecting big things. You're expecting to be protected. You're expecting to be, to be guided through this maze of life that they have to you know um, to make their way through. So I think that is definitely something that a lot of men, and I see quite a lot of that recently. I've seen quite a lot of men, even over here in the UK on a Sunday, you'll see quite a lot of men in the parks with their sons or their
Right.
daughters, playing and going for walk, or going out for a meal or something like that, and you can tell, okay, these are the single fathers and so forth. But they are showing up, which is really, really important. You
And I
know,
and I definitely agree with you in terms of the showing up part. I think that what creates a disconnect is we were doing a show on communication, and understandably, I was talking about the fact that people always say, "Hey, men don't communicate as well as women." Right, or women use more words or something, men, and that's like somebody has thrown that out, but there is no statistical there's actually no study to say that women actually talk more than men. I think what has been established is that women are actually better with their language and expressing how they feel. right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they spend a lot of their lives negotiating stuff through words, whereas men are enculturated to act primarily, before necessarily like negotiating through words.
Yeah.
We act more so than we speak, and so I think that we don't necessarily have the language of heart, or we don't have the language to necessarily say this is how I'm feeling. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that transcends in a male perspective even into the job sense, because a lot of work scenarios, right, will be more understanding of women who have to deal with the intricacies of raising children than they will with a man, right?
Right.
Because you saying, "Oh, I'm leaving work early to go, so that I can make it home to go play with my daughter or my son," or "I'm leaving work because I have to take my daughter to the doctor." You know what I mean? I'm the one who has to take my. It is viewed a little bit differently, between males and females. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, our culture has done a very good job of perpetuating this system. Even paternity, I don't know if you've taken, paternal leave, like, when
Yeah. Yeah.
you right.
Yeah.
And you have, I remember taking that too.
Mhm.
And the reality of it is that it's a big, big debate as to whether, like in Sweden, where I think both spouses get what, 6 months?
Yes. Crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
So literally, a parent can be with the baby for a whole year.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Both parents can be with the baby for a whole year. So the question is, in terms of culturally, how do you think this culture can change, where men are viewed as being just as important in the child raising process as women?
I really think it's down to the men. I think the men have to just have to show up. They have to just keep making sure that they are relevant, to the relationship, relevant to to their children, and just not stop. They just need to get involved. They just need to make sure that they're having those conversations, and they're bringing. They're not just having those conversations, but they're actually showing through their actions that they're a positive influence. That they're
Mm,
actually bringing something. They've got actually something to offer, and it's a shame that they are having to, you know, to to literally be quite they have to fight for it basically,
yep.
because otherwise, if they don't, it is just going to be, assumed that, well, there you go,
You're not interested,
they're not interested,
right? You're not
and
interested.
so forth. Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean, I know of a friend of mine who, he was married and the relationship broke down, and she took the kids and said, you're not gonna see them. That's it.
mm, using them
And
as a weapon.
yeah, but what he did, he purposely and intentionally said, that's not going to happen. I'm going to go through the courts. I'm going to fight for to see my kids.
Right.
I want to make it official. I'm going to go through the legal system. And, he went to all that effort at quite a lot of expense. But he managed to get to see his kids, through the legal process. And whether he had them for, every 2 weeks,
Right.
that was it. But he intentionally, said, what? No, I want to be part. I want to, to have a part in the upbringing of my kids, and
Right.
I'm not going to let anyone stop me. Now, some men would just automatically say, well, she stopped me from seeing my kids, so
It's a
you know,
freedom ticket.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's her fault. Look at that.
Yep.
She's gonna come to her senses one day and realize that she needed me and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, it's the kids that suffer. So
Yeah, and what you're saying actually resonates with me, and actually is a without sharing too much, is like reality, for me,
mm, mm,
because I
mm,
think that one of the lamentations that I had growing up was how pressed were you as a father to present for me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that that's such a critical thing that the story should be. And I've had situations. I have a friend just like you who um, estranged wife in an estranged relationship with his wife, estranged relationship with his daughter, because from the breakup of he and his wife, the wife poisoned the daughter. It wasn't a great breakup, but it was one
mm,
of those
mm,
where he has done everything. And many times when I bump into him, his lamentation is how he reached out and she's not responding. Birthday, he sent this for birthday, she didn't say whether she received it or blah blah. And I
mm.
just said to him, I said, you know what, just keep doing it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't stop doing it, because what will happen is at some point in her life, whether it's after you're gone or she gets older, she's going to turn around and all that stuff will be your track record, that you didn't stop.
yeah, yeah.
That you didn't stop, you didn't give up, kind of like the example that you're giving of your friend, where he didn't give up. He never quit. He was willing to put in the expense to say that
Mm,
whatever it is, because that then becomes your legacy of saying, yeah, this thing happened and it was a negative thing in the relationship, but as a father, I stood up because I wanted to make sure that I was there, you know.
mm, mm.
And it's hard to do, I think, when you are not in relationship with somebody, right? And somebody who has a significant part of your life is holding a significant part of your life. And it takes a certain level of maturity, I say, to be able to say, regardless of what's happened between the two of us, let's treat
Yeah,
these children as the most important thing between us. You know what I mean? We don't have to get along. We just have to get along for the sake of the kids. Right?
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of things that you're seeing, like now during this COVID time, I was sharing at the beginning of how you're a new minted counselor. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks.
Um, what are you seeing showing up? Like, you don't, I know patient confidentiality, but what are the things that you're seeing, especially during this COVID time where I know a lot of people, such as myself, we are very anxious. We're finding ways, trying to find healthy ways of coping. But what are you seeing, and what are the things that men are showing up with?
There is a lot of issues with addictions, especially pornography.
Right.
There is a lot of physical and emotional abuse of women in particular in relationships, because obviously everybody's indoors, everybody's in a confined space. There's all this social distancing that's taking place. There's restrictions of where you can go, and obviously it's slowly loosening up now. But you know, at the height of things, it was, yeah, literally you were stuck in your home, apart from just going to go to get the essential commodities that you need for the home. But apart from that, you were indoors, and that really showcased the issues that we have in terms of marriages. There's we've got a long list of um, of couples on waiting lists, waiting for couples therapy and counseling. Simply because of the whole COVID situation.
So
So
basically, yeah, sorry. So basically, what you're saying is that people are showing up as they really are. This is one of those
yeah,
times where you're having to face yourself.
yeah,
And the escapes, I think that the escapes of what used to happen outside. So I always think that like working outside of the house is like an escape from being home, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because we
yeah,
spend more time at work than we do really at our homes. For people who commute, you're commuting, you have people who commute an hour and a half to work in the morning, so they have to leave the house maybe at 6:30, 7:30.
yeah, 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 yeah,
They go to
absolutely.
work, they work from whatever, and 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and then they have to commute back. By the time they're coming in, it's dinner time. If you've
Yeah,
got little kids, within like a 2 hour span, they're going to bed, so you're only
absolutely.
seeing them in that window. And then
Yeah,
um
yeah,
you, You're supposed to make time for the kids, the wife, or the girlfriend, or whatever, and then you have to start your own cycle. So that was an
Yes,
escape from people who are being in the house. And now,
absolutely.
for over 140 days,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you're having to face the reality of who you are and whoever your other, significant other is, and the people are your kids. You have to deal
Absolutely.
with your mess. I remember telling my oldest one day when she was having a conversation with me many years ago about, oh no, she was having some issue, and she was talking about her mother and saying, but I don't have, that's why I like talking to you, I hang with you because of it. I told her, I said, listen, you only see me for like 2 hours a day.
Yes.
Monday through Friday. You see me for like 2 hours a day. And the reality is that when you see me, I'm really not in a position to even like put up with stuff, because I'm tired from the day. I've had people talking at me in my job. So when I come home, I'm really just looking for, okay, I really want to minimize whatever's coming at me.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you tell me something crazy, I'll probably have a reconciliatory kind of tone. I'll be reconciling it because I'll be like, you know what? I really don't want to deal and think with that. Whereas
Absolutely.
when you're with people, there's time to hash out stuff,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
and time to actually look at behaviors and be like, I actually don't like that.
Yeah.
But it's something somebody has been doing for a while, and now it's like I have to deal with it. So it makes sense what you're saying. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Now, you talked about pornography and you talked about abuse. Is that a an increase, or is that just that now it's becoming more visible because people are spending more time together? You know what I mean?
It sounds like it is. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are. However, it sounds as if it is an increase, because obviously there would be an indication of the current usage, you know, and the amount of people who are accessing pornography, and for them to see a spike
Mm.
in that usage is definitely indicates that that more and more people are accessing it.
Yeah, and I think I can like pull something up as we're talking. Uh,
Mm.
so, what is your advice? What is your best advice for people during this time? Like, how are you cautioning men to approach this very trying time, right? From a heart level, a mind level, and a spiritual level. What are those three places? How are we supposed to approach and survive this really tense, I don't have other ways to deal with situation right now that's going on in the world?
Yeah. Well, I think with men, what this situation has caused us to do is we've got more time on our hands, and that's the same with women. All right, so you're indoors, you're working from home if you are working, but you've got more time on your hands to think.
Mm.
You see, and what thinking does for men can be dangerous because we're thinking about everything. We're thinking about the whole world. We're thinking about our jobs. We're thinking about what's going to happen in the future. We're thinking about money. We're thinking about you know how we're going to navigate this whole situation. Is my job going to be secure? Is what are we going to do with our with the mortgage if I lose my job, and if there's no job security. So there's all those things that men would tend to look at and try to solve because we're wired that way. We're fixers. We try to fix things, and so we're trying to figure out. So if I go on furlough, if I'm on furlough, if this furlough is going to lead to a redundancy, what plans should I be putting in place, to counteract that?
Hmm.
We're thinking about this, we're thinking about that, we're thinking about the relationship, we're thinking about goodness me, all I need is just some quiet, you know. I just want, some space to myself, some space from the kids, space from from the wife or girlfriend or
Right.
whatever, you know. So there's all those things that we think about, and I think what's very important is that you have to create that space. You have to create that time where you just sit and just exhale, you know. Just it's time to exhale, and you have to find that and make that space, whether it's you know going upstairs, to your bedroom and just saying, okay, I'm gonna at this time every day, I'm gonna just have that space where I'm just gonna, put on the headphones and listen to some music, or just do something different that
Mm.
just take your mind away from the same old, same old. Because what that has done is that every time you wake up in the morning, you're literally in the same space. It's the same routine every single day, and it can drive you crazy. So, looking after your mental health is very important, and men do need that space just to be able to zone out and just chill, and just to be able to reflect, and even to plan, to
Right.
plan on what's my next strategy, what's the next step in
Right.
case this doesn't go right, and so forth. So I think that's good. But again, also it's also interacting with other men,
Right.
because if men need men, we need to have that interaction with each other, and it's to be able to just create that. And just as businesses are trying to survive and trying to be creative in how they operate, we have to be creative in our own little world as men.
Right.
you know so
Right.
whether we meet up on Zoom, whether we're going to the park and social distancing, but we're still meeting and having conversations. Yeah, we need to be doing, thinking about that in a practical way.
And I think you make a good point, because one of the things I think that the male culture does is to value who you are, whether you have money, your job, your title, those kinds of things. And I think that it's just a big part of male culture, right? Maybe
Mhm.
it's actually become a big part of world culture, because clearly it affects women the same way, to a
Yeah.
certain extent, that they want. And that's why part of what I've been saying is that there's a lot of male culture which is perpetuated by the way women relate with men, right? And I think vice versa. Women always complain about how other women put pressure on them necessarily. I think with men, we don't pressure each other. It's like you never pressure a guy to look nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we have pressures about strength, about money, about power. Those are where our pressures come. And
Hmm.
I think jobs are a big part of that. And I think that we find value in our worth. A big part of our worth is in what we do and what it brings and how we provide. And once that is taken away through layoffs from COVID,
Yes.
through anything else that just affects your ability to show up as a provider, there is a big part of who you are as a man that gets stripped away. And part of the work I think that I always try to build, and for myself, even through Wholehearted Men, and kind of envisioning this, is that it shows a lack of self acceptance and really just connectivity with self. You know what I mean? Because if you're okay with you and you know that, yeah, it's losing your job is just, it's what's happening in the world right now. A lot of people
Yeah.
have lost their jobs. A lot of people are in the same situation. And yeah, it's tough, but we're in a very unique situation. And so you still have to show up. But the first person you have to show up for is yourself. And we are so driven, I think, because of man culture, to show up for other people, to show up for your family, to show up, to be, how am I going to provide? Like you said, to plan what's my next great move. When sometimes what my next great move is, I need to, like you said, take the time to just feed me, you
Yeah.
know, and
Absolutely.
and get away from numbing exercises, because a lot of the activities that I know that I was taught to cope with stuff is numbing stuff. When a man goes to his man cave and watches sports, it's a numbing activity.
Yeah.
When a
Absolutely.
man goes outside and works on the car all day by himself, it's a numbing activity. It's very engaging when a man is building stuff at the house and working. He's not out there chasing women. He's not out, what I'm saying? He's not gambling. He's not out
Yeah.
there drinking. He's not, but it's a numbing activity.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that,
It can
though,
feel therapeutic as well.
exactly. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I think that you made another great point, which is about scheduling. And even in my own, one of the things that I know I have to do is really just like schedule. And you have to schedule time for everything. So you have to schedule time for your kids, have to schedule time for yourself, have to schedule time for your intimate life, right?
Mhm.
And then you have to schedule time for whatever else you're doing. If you're looking for a job, if you're doing this, if you're doing all those aspects need scheduling.
Yeah.
And it
You need to
doesn't
be
feel
intentional.
like exactly you have to be intentional about it. And I'll be the first to say I haven't always been intentional about those kinds of
Mhm.
things. In fact, I
Mhm.
am learning to be more so because I was one of those people who felt that when you structure a lot of stuff, you take the spontaneity out of life. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what I'm learning is actually that's just you trying to be a confused person and try to live in flux, kind of.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
It's more exciting and it's not exciting at a younger age. That's exciting, an exciting life. Like, I don't know what's coming next, but I want to jump at it.
Yes.
Get
Yes.
older, you need structure because your brain needs more of that space. You need to create a routine so that your brain doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about things that need to be automatic. You know what I mean? And you have
Absolutely.
more brain time to kind of do the things that you need to use your brain for. So planning and coming up with, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow, and writing a plan, having goals and really aiming for those goals, and then writing down
Mhm.
stuff,
Mhm.
um, you know, helps you feel not like life is happening to you, but life is happening for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And a part of the process in this is how do we equip men to be better. And it's funny because I'm realizing that the real audience for the Wholehearted Men Show, Philip, is actually women.
Ready.
Yeah, I'm actually realizing because
Yes.
men
Yes.
are not going to sit on a
That surprised
podcast.
me. That doesn't
Exactly.
surprise. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Men are not like, I'm getting on this podcast to listen to how to be a better man. I
Yeah.
know that wasn't on my agenda.
Yes. Yes.
It wasn't on my agenda. So it's not like men, oh, I'm listening to ideas about how to be a better man. I think that a lot of times women are the ones who are checking in to be like, oh, this is an interesting, different conversation,
Mhm. Mhm.
especially
Mhm.
from a cultural perspective that we come from, because you don't hear these kind of conversations happening where we come from.
Yeah.
Right. So we're having them. And I always like to enculturate it because I like to show people how far we've come and what the
Absolutely.
base is. Because it's like you said, when my base is, listen, Mossy and being, being in a place where there's mostly being served for hours and then going straight to, if that's my base, then the measurement that you can use, not to say that that's where my measurement has to rise, but
Yeah.
that's truly how far you've come. And for me, those are the people that I'm out there trying to engage, and the ones who I know are not going to be watching this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But if somebody
Absolutely.
can send them a little tidbit, if somebody can tell them, hey, I heard your own people talking about this, this is a different conversation.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So words of wisdom. We're coming. We've got about 4 minutes left, and
Yeah.
this can be anything. I want your Philip Popoma life skills, words of wisdom, pep talk, right? Um, for,
Uh,
for any aspect of young males. Let's do young males. Young men, and then let's go into uh, men. And when I say men, so young men meaning teenagers who are about to come into maturity, and then young men who are coming into their 20s, and then the rest of us who should act like we're older people, but we're not. We're still trying to come out of youth. So give me 3 layers of pep talk.
yeah. I think with young men, I think it's important that young men, um, first of all, listen to or interact with other men, older men, just to, to get wisdom, to learn about what being a man is all about, and just hearing experiences, and to learn from even learning mistakes from, from some of the older men, So I think that's important, for there to be that crossover where, experiences are being passed down, to the younger generation, and say, look, you can do better than what I did. You can, not make the same mistakes I made, and so forth. Um, I think it's important for a young man to interact with women, in terms of, have intelligent conversations with women, to have women as friends, with no strings attached, just to get to know women, and to understand how women think, and understand how they function, and so forth, and just to be able to communicate with the opposite sex in an intelligent way, and not one that is based on what they see on these music videos and stuff like that, So I think that's important, and I think um, it's important to encourage the young men to dream big, and to be creative, and to, to actually find out what it is that they enjoy doing. What's their passion, what are they good at, and seeing how they can develop themselves. And this is the world is geared towards them at the moment. It's
Right.
all these young kids who are basically, becoming millionaires, and in their teens and stuff like that. So it's the world is their oyster. This is that time. This is the time for the youth, and they just literally need to, to equip themselves and take advantage of this time in their lives. They've got lots of energy. They've got, lots of skills. They're very skilled. They've got lots of talents, and it's just about, shaping that and making sure that it's been channeled in the right direction.
Right.
And for the older man, again, it's turning up. It's being relevant. It's making sure that, you don't miss out on the influence that you can impart to other men and to younger men as well. And also to never think that, this is it. I'm in my 50s or in my 40s, and that's it. I'm not, there's nothing more that life can give me. It's just being saying, look, whatever my mind wants to do, I'm going to do it, no matter what age I am. I'm just going to pursue my dreams, and yeah, because I think sometimes some men give up.
Yes.
They've been beaten down so much, by life, that they just give up.
Right.
And I think, we need to lift each other up. That is so important. And whenever a man, and this is to married men, whenever you say to yourself, if you have to say, listen, I'm the man in this house, you're not the man.
You're not the man. You're not the man.
The moment you say, I'm the man in this house, that, my friend, you're not the man. That's
Yeah.
just an indication that you're not the man, because you are the man. You wouldn't need to say that at all.
I think I found myself saying that to an 8-year-old once. on that note, I really want to thank you. I think I really want to thank you. I mean, the takeaways, being intentional, really, I think, to kind of just make a synopsis of what you said, is really being, at the end, is really being aware of where you fit in the story.
Yeah.
We all have a part to play in this life story, and I think that whether you're young, you're middle aged, you're older, you're part of the same tapestry. If you undo a piece of string on one end, thinking that it won't affect the rest of the twine, you know what I mean? Eventually, over time, you can unwind the whole ball. So, and we are all a piece of that, and I think that coming from that kind of mindset and being deliberate about how we intersect with ourselves and how we intersect with other people is really about being wholehearted. It's really about what we talk about here at the Institute for Wholehearted Men, which is about really trying to nurture men's spirits, their hearts, and their minds to just be better. It's a daily thing. I don't claim to have any sort of moratorium on it. I work on it. But one thing I'm committed to, like I tell people, is working on it every day. You know, Working on it. And sometimes it's ugly because people will tell you stuff about you that is not nice to hear. But the commitment to say I want to be better tomorrow than I was today is just an incremental thing, because those little small incremental things eventually amount to a lot. It's kind of like saving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Compound interest.
Yeah. And the
Just
thing that we need, every man needs in that life to attain that, which is the most important, is to have God in their
yes,
lives.
yes,
Without that spiritual dimension in your life, listen here, it's a waste of time.
right.
It's an absolute waste of time, especially in these days that we're living in now. You know, there needs to be godly men, because it's that spiritual aspect of a man's life that is able to channel
Mm,
and influence his thoughts and his motives and everything else that comes with that.
right.
It's the most important dimension.
Right, right. And so, for all of you on our viewers, as we end our this episode of Wholehearted Men, I wanted to thank Philip. But is as he's saying, for those of you who are like, "Oh God," like some of you say higher power. Is like the whole idea is that if you have spiritual covering, right, and you
Absolutely.
understand that there's something greater than you, okay, you are in a better place to hold yourself humble,
Yeah,
to create a level of humbleness that says, I'll be open to change, right?
exactly.
And
Exactly.
correction, change and correction. So, my brother, I definitely want to thank you for taking the time out. I know you're a busy man, but you're
Oh,
always yeah, you're always welcome here on the Wholehearted Men Show. And we'll definitely be seeing you soon and talking with you soon. All right.
most definitely. No, it was a lovely pleasure to be on your show.
All right, great. So I don't want you to necessarily like disappear anytime soon, but
No, I'm
uh,
here anytime, man. Anytime.
I'll. You know how it is. I'll be chasing you soon to be like, hey, I need you to come on the show. So next time we'll look to see if we can get a group of panelists, and bring up a different conversation. Okay.
No, sounds good.
All
Sounds
right,
good.
sir. Great.
Listen,